Welcome to Gooseberry Science and Education videos. My name's Noah. Joining me today is our little orange gooseberry character, my trusty investigative assistant for this explainer. Today we're unraveling what is easily one of the most bizarre, heavily classified webs ever, a wild overlap of established science, the paranormal, and deep military intelligence. So here's the massive central mystery we're exploring today. Was Dr. Andrija Puharić a genuine psychic pioneer, or was he actually a CIA mind control architect? It's crazy to think about, but his life was this unbelievable intersection of hard science, deep state intelligence, and totally fringe phenomena. Our little gooseberry friend is going to help us look at the facts straight from his archival records. We have to decide, was the guy a brilliant believer documenting the unknown, or a coerced asset running psychological operations?
To understand Puharic, we absolutely have to understand this concept of the nine. To be completely impartial here, they were described as either extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings supposedly channeled by Puharic's test subjects. Or, alternatively, they were a synthetic psychological sandbox created entirely through the power of hypnosis. This idea of the nine, it is the absolute foundation for the two competing theories of his entire career, popping up in the early 1950s and sticking around for decades.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the early years and the round table.
Shifting all the way back to the late 1940s, Puharic transitioned from a medical student in the Army's Specialized Training Program into a full-on paranormal investigator. He originally started at Northwestern University in a program recruiting highly capable individuals for special military categories, but he quickly pivoted right into ESP and telepathy research. And as our gooseberry assistant is helping us track, his chronological evolution moved through a series of really bizarre, heavily funded operations that functioned kind of like front companies. He started the Round Table Foundation in Maine in 1948, then moved to a biomedical company called Intellectron in New York in the 60s, and finally set up Lab 9 in the 70s. Each era brought, slightly darker and stranger experiments.
Now, what's really interesting about this is just how staggering the roster of elites and military brass who funded his psychic research in Maine actually was. We're talking about deep, blue-blooded money. The DuPont and Astor families, former Vice President Henry A. Wallace, Arthur Young, the guy who invented the Bell helicopter, and even the famous author Aldous Huxley. And right alongside them, the Army, the Navy, and the CIA. No way, right?
So what exactly were all these elites funding? Contact with the Nine. Puharic developed this very strict mechanical protocol to improve the clarity of these paranormal transmissions, which were allegedly dictated by the entities themselves. First, he'd induce a hypnotic trance. Second, he'd place the subject inside a specifically built Faraday cage to block out electronic signals. And third, he made sure the subject had copper touching their skin. And the crazy part? Audio tapes from his archives show that when he followed these exact steps, the transmissions actually did get substantially clearer.
Section 2, Mind Control and Intellectron.
Moving into the 1960s, Puharic sets up Intellectron in New York, and his focus totally shifts away from seances in the woods, diving directly into the dark arts of radio frequencies. He invented a device called the TD-100, essentially a tooth implant. Side A? Well, that was the public-facing medical breakthrough, a device to help deaf people hear by bypassing the ear canal entirely and sending frequencies directly to the brain's hearing centers. But side B is where it gets sketchy. The covert intelligence application was a military tool capable of beaming voices directly into a target's head using specific radio frequencies. It just perfectly illustrates the tension between his public medical research and his covert intelligence tools.
And right during this exact same period, Puharic was in close correspondence with Dr. José Delgado. Delgado was actively testing mind control on animals. He implanted radio receivers into the heads of bulls, and he could literally pacify a charging bull and control its movements with a remote control. Puharic and Delgado were colleagues, actively exchanging letters while this wild testing was going on.
So, the crucial point is this terrifying question. If you can bypass the ear canal with frequencies to make the deaf hear, or, stop a charging bull with a radio chip, could you synthetically implant thoughts into a human being? This really highlights the terrifying possibility of psychic warfare being tested in the early 1960s, moving way beyond chemical mind control and straight into the realm of electromagnetic waves.
Section 3. Channeling the Nine.
Fast forward to the 1970s. The Intellectron company seemingly vanishes, and Puharic travels to Israel to study the famous psychic Uri Geller.
Puharich uses his classic hypnosis techniques on him, and instantly, like right on cue, the 9 begin transmitting again after decades of total silence. The timing is incredibly suspicious. It leads a lot of researchers to wonder if Geller was actually an unwitting guinea pig for Puharich, just to test if these alien entities could be synthetically summoned using frequency and hypnosis.
To give you an idea of how extreme the manipulation might have been, consider the number 50. That's the 50-plus miles that Uri Geller allegedly teleported from New York City, suddenly waking up crashing through the screen porch of Puharich's estate in Ossining. Puharich totally convinced Geller that the 9 had teleported him to prove their power. But was this a genuine paranormal miracle or a deep psychological operation to see exactly what a subject could be forced to believe?
Section 4. The Space Kids.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. After Geller becomes famous on television, this strange wave of psychic phenomena suddenly begins manifesting among young people all over the world. Puharich recruits a group of these kids who are showing spontaneous psychic abilities and brings them up to his estate, which he now called Lab 9. On the surface, he was using hypnosis to regress them into UFO abduction memories and contact the 9. But if you look closer at these activities, they were conducting remote viewing experiments on Cold War targets. Plus, Lab 9 was receiving funding linked directly to the Stanford Research Institute, literally the birthplace of the CIA's official remote viewing program. So Lab 9 became this bizarre hub blending youth psychic phenomena with potential government espionage.
Breaking down the remote viewing sessions from Puharich's archives reveals a pretty disturbing pattern. The space kids, while under hypnotic trance, were given targets like the Kremlin and Russian submarines. The audio tapes actually reveal him asking the kids for the specific code names used by Russian guerrilla soldiers. So yeah, this wasn't just talking to aliens. These kids were allegedly tasked with spying on highly classified international targets.
Which naturally brings us back to a really critical question. Were the 9 genuine extraterrestrials offering cosmic guidance? Or was the entire alien narrative just a psychological sandbox? Could it have been a clever manipulation tactic designed to trick young people into doing remote viewing, intelligence gathering for the CIA, without them ever realizing they were spies? Section 5. A Mysterious End. Let's fast forward to his final years in the 1990s. Puharich is living out his days extremely paranoid, as the puzzle pieces of his dual life finally start closing in on him. Near the end of his life, he began to open up more during lectures. This quote is a chilling admission recounted by his assistant, heavily implying his capability in psychological manipulation. He said, "I can produce in your mind the image of an alien experience." He essentially admitted to using flashing lights and audio tones to synthesize the experience of an abduction, straight out of an MKUltra-style playbook.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because this paranoia led to an incredibly mysterious finale. Puharich actually kept a legal pad documenting his fears. He claimed assassins had installed extremely low-frequency, or ELF, emitters in his television just to harm him. He also noted that he'd recently refused a CIA offer to head an ELF weapon research department. Oh, and he met with Jacobo Grinberg, a consciousness researcher who vanished without a trace shortly after their meeting. Finally, in 1995, Puharich was found dead after mysteriously falling down the stairs while home alone. So we are left with the 2 faces of Dr. Andrija Puharić, based firmly on the source material. Side A presents a brilliant, genuine believer who documented real paranormal phenomena, meditated in the Great Pyramid, and chased UFOs. Side B, however, presents a coerced asset of the intelligence community, a pioneer of mind control, trapped in his own web of psychological warfare, who even warned future researchers not to make his mistakes.
It leaves us pondering this final, provocative thought. In a world of classified frequencies and advanced mind control testing that dates back half a century, how much of our reality is genuine and how much can be synthetically implanted? Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. We are already working on a new topic.